When people think of a solar-powered watch, they normally think of the Citizen EcoDrive. But there is a big Swiss giant in the industry that produces solar-powered watches. This, in my watch box to the left, amongst other things, Drew's watch and some of mine, is the Tag Heuer Aquaracer Professional 200-meter Solargraph. And this thing's technology is absolutely unbelievable. Let's dive into this in a little bit more detail. Welcome back to the Chisholm Hunter channel. My name is Harrison, as always, and today we're diving into all the Easter eggs about this Tag Heuer Solargraph. And believe it or not, there is a ton of Easter eggs. There's a ton of cool features that we need to discuss. Not to mention the fact that it's solar powered and the technology that's used is pretty damn incredible. But let's start, as we normally do, with all the specs of this watch. The size on this model comes in at 40 millimeters, which, let's not lie, is pretty damn perfect for an industry that is preferring smaller watches. Everyone is kind of downsizing and more attracted to those smaller watches, and I like seeing the Aquaracer going down that route because this is more attractive to me because it is that little bit smaller. It comes in at 11.4 millimeters in thickness. Again, brilliant because it sits that little bit closer to your wrist and wraps around your wrist pretty wonderfully, especially with that rubber strap. The case on this watch comes in DLC coated steel, which gives it that kind of blackened forged look, and it also has a rubber strap with a deployment clasp at the bottom just here. Now, the rubber strap, when you first get this watch, like this is quite large, so I would cut it to the length of your wrist, obviously. For me, that would be around about 6.5 inches, just for reference when you see these watch shots. Now, there are a couple of different variants to choose between if you like the technology, but not necessarily this darkened aesthetic. You have steel black dial, you have a steel blue dial, and you also have a titanium black dial with a bracelet. Now, for me, for my sports watches, I prefer rubber or NATO straps. For example, my Omega Seamaster. I've been wearing this a lot more recently. I like it. I'm kind of falling back in love with it. But that's kind of my preference. And the reason for that is because when I'm wearing a sports watch, I live a very active lifestyle. And I don't want to scratch or dent or chip my bracelet because I know that the only thing I'll be able to see is that scratch or dent or whatever it is. And yes, I understand that this adds character to a watch. It adds a little bit of flavor, a little bit of life to the watch. But when it comes to expensive purchases, you do want to look after your product. This watch, being mostly titanium and also having carbon on the bezel and a couple of Easter eggs on the bezel, which are really cool, we'll get into that in a second, is extremely light. Honestly, it's like a feather. You hardly even realize that this is on your wrist. And that's essentially because it's quartz operated, but also because of those materials used. So let's get this on the scales and see exactly how much it weighs. This watch, according to our scales in the studio here, comes in at roughly 112 to 13 grams, so it is extremely light. Remember when you get this on the wrist. But I have to say that Tag Heuer have a real knack for stylizing things. They appeal to a younger market, and that's partially why I have a love for Tag. I believe that they get new clients into the market, they get new watch lovers into the market through their marketing and through their styling. And sometimes Tag can get a lot of stick, and I do kick back to a lot of that stick by saying the more watch nerds, the more watch guys that we can get in our community, the better. And Tag Heuer as a brand are brilliant at getting those new people in. Moving on to the bezel of this watch. And this is where one of the first Easter eggs comes through because it's super, super cool. And it honestly is something that would attract me to this watch. It's something so different that you don't really see that much. And that's why I love it. It is a carbon forged bezel, but that carbon forged bezel has swirls of luminescence through it. Now, when you are sitting in the dark with this watch, you'll be able to see those really dull swirls come through that bezel. And it's a really nice little feature that you can tell your friends of. You can talk to those watch nerds about when you're in the dark, when you're looking at that lume. As well as this, the numerals on this bezel are in white and they are loomed, and that makes it a fully functional diver that can go to 200 meters underwater, which is still pretty cool. They've not lost any of their functionality through the pretty cool design of this watch. Another little splash of color, another little design feature that I love is the fact that they've got a really light blue hand. The second hand is an extremely light blue, almost electric blue, or some could say Tiffany blue. Now, this is just another example of Tag, quite rightly and quite smartly, jumping on the trend of Tiffany blue, let's say. They're getting more young people into the industry because they all see Tiffany blue as a very fun color, and that's why they're using them on their dials or on their watches. And I love this. I love it when brands tune in to the stylized aspect of watches, almost like fashion. They change really, really quickly, and some brands are behind the times. Tag Heuer just isn't. They're actually soaring ahead. The hour markers are filled with super luminova, which shines extremely bright in the dark, and it also has a date window at 3 o'clock. You guys know me, I would have preferred that date window at 6 o'clock, but it's not the be all and the end all, and that is essentially just my opinion. Now, where this watch is really cool, and something that I didn't know, is that the dial actually fuels the movement, the solar-powered movement. It almost has a teak dial, which means that there's tons of lines with depth. It comes in and out of depth that go through the dial. Now, something that you might not know is that one of these layers is actually straight through to the movement. And when you shine it in artificial light, for example, the light we have here, or you shine it in sunlight, it can charge your watch, one day can charge your watch for 6 months. And we've got there at last. We're going to be talking about the movement of this watch. But not before we plug Chisholm Hunter, because it is the Chisholm Hunter channel. Remember that Chisholm Hunter are official stockist of Tag Heuer. If you want to shop this watch, or any in the Tag collection, make sure you click the link below. The movement on this watch is the TH50-00, and it's actually the same movement that is featured in the Citizen Eco Drive. Now, the reason for this is because they're both supplied by Leisure Parade. Now, there's a huge stigma in the industry about quartz watches, especially amongst collectors. People, I don't want to say that they don't really like quartz watches, but they prefer seeing the beating heart of their watch. They prefer it when their watch isn't battery operated and they can see the cogs and the movements. And a lot of us that are in the watch space got into the industry because we liked the engine of said watch. But you can't deny that this technology is pretty damn cool. It's almost like the Tesla of its time. It's kind of frowned upon, but people are starting to convert. And it's not totally quartz, that's the thing. It isn't totally quartz, it is solar powered, it is a Solargraph model. Can I get behind it? I'm not sure. I do have quartz watches in my collection, but that's mainly out of hype rather than wanting to buy one. I do like the style aspect of this watch, but I do wish that it came with an automatic movement. Now, this specific model comes in at £2,700. However, if you wanted the cheaper variants, I would go for steel, which come in at 100, I wish they came in at 100, 1,950. So there is quite a big difference between them, almost £1,000. I like titanium and it's a harder material to work with, but for that price difference, I'd probably go with steel. However, it is your personal preference. It's whatever you want to go for. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider hitting that subscribe button or that little thumbs up button, bell icon, whatever it is. Remember that we have an exclusive After Hours Club for all you brilliant members out there. Again, I want to say thank you. Follow our Instagram, Chisholm Hunter Watches. What else can I plug? I don't think there's that much else. I'll see you guys soon.